Emily Walsh had always lived at the edges of the social circles at Crestwood High. She was quiet, thoughtful, and spent most of her free time volunteering at the local animal shelter or browsing used bookstores for hidden literary treasures. Her clothes reflected that. Modest, slightly vintage, often second-hand finds, she pinned together with care. In a sea of brand-name t-shirts and perfectly charted fashion trends, Emily's wardrobe looked like a gentle whisper rather than a shout. It was at the end of her junior year that her friends first noticed the antique lace dress tucked in the back of Emily's closet. She'd found it at a charity shop on Main Street, an ivory heirloom from the 1950s, bodice embroidered with hand-stitched flowers, skirt flowing into a keel of delicate scalloped lace. An older woman had told Emily that it once belonged to a bride from the town's old mill community and had never been worn. Emily had paid $10 for it, her eyes shining as she carried it home in a crumpled paper bag. When she first tried the dress on in her bedroom, she felt as though she could almost hear a faint echo of the woman who had first worn it, a memory of a day bright with promise and laughter. But the mirrored reflection showed a slender teenager with soft brown hair and inquisitive hazel eyes patchily lit by the fading afternoon sun. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and imagined twirling in a sunlit garden. "Oh, looks like something out of a movie," her mother had said upon catching a glimpse of her in the hallway. "Just don't let it get ruined, okay? It's fragile." Emily nodded, cradling the dress carefully back onto its hanger. That weekend at a small gathering in Chloe's backyard, Chloe being the unofficial queen bee of their group, someone finally broached the subject of Emily's new vintage gown. "Seriously, Em, where did you get that thing?" Justin asked, voice light and teasing. He was tall and lanky, good at basketball and giving casual compliments. "Looks like a wedding dress. Or a nightgown from Aunt Gertrude's attic." A ripple of laughter circled the picnic table where they sat on mismatched folding chairs. Sandwiches and soda cans scattered around. String lights hung loosely overhead as June air warmed into evening. Emily dipped her head, cheeks flushing pink. "I just thought it was pretty," she murmured. "It's cute," Marissa said, draping her legs over one side of the chair. "If you're 80 years old." More laughter. Emily forced a tight smile, glanced at her hands in her lap, and the moment passed. No one said it outright, but she knew what they meant. She didn't belong in something so unfashionable. Their clothes were chic, skinny jeans, crop tops, designer sneakers, while she looked like she belonged in a black and white photograph from decades earlier. After that day, Emily's new dress remained folded and forgotten in its white garment bag, shoved to the back of her closet. She didn't wear it out again. She took to dressing more normally to blend in, but the memory of their laughter lasted far longer than the dress ever would have. Years passed. Emily graduated with honors and earned a scholarship to a small liberal arts college in Vermont. She continued volunteering at animal shelters and studied art history, delighting in the conversation of professors who discussed the uses of lace in Victorian morning dresses or the symbolism woven into medieval tapestries. She discovered more about how clothing had always been a powerful form of self-expression and how ostracism often hinged on who you were wearing. Sitting in lecture halls, she realized that her friends from Crestwood had been cruel in a way she had only begun to understand. But she didn't dwell on the past. In college, she found her tribe: art students who scoured flea markets for rare fabrics, friends who enlarged antique lace into window curtains or framed them as wall art. She met Nathaniel Hawkins in her sophomore year while working in the campus museum. He was a graduate student studying photography. He had a soft voice that was easy to mishear, a wry smile, and a habit of adjusting his round glasses as he considered each exhibit. The first time she saw him, he was intently examining a faded photograph of a bride from 1922, wearing a simple lace gown, not unlike her treasured thrift shop find. They struck up a conversation about the evolution of bridal wear, and he invited her to assist with cataloging a collection of vintage wedding photographs for his thesis. Their friendship blossomed into a slow, easy love. They spent hours rummaging through dusty archives, discovering letters stuffed between pages of old books, and tracing the provenance of dresses and portraits. On summer weekends, they would drive to rural barn sales in search of antique frames and delicate lace collars. Emily found herself dreaming of her own wedding, not to conform, but as a chance to celebrate love in a way that was meaningful to her. On a cool autumn afternoon, Nathaniel took Emily to the ivy-covered gazebo by the lagoon on campus. Leaves swirled like burnt orange confetti at their feet. He had rented a small radio and arranged for his photographer friends to snap pictures discreetly from a distance. He dropped to one knee his camera bag at his side, and asked her to be his wife. Tears shining in her eyes, she said yes, hugging him tightly. In that moment, she felt the past unraveling, the mocking voices she had heard years ago fading into insignificance. Soon after, Emily and Nathaniel began wedding planning. They wanted a small ceremony, just their closest family and friends, back in Crestwood, at the old botanical gardens where Emily used to read books as a girl. But there was one small detail that Emily couldn't let go: the lace dress from her youth. She called her mother from their rented flat in Burlington and asked if she had managed to keep that heirloom gown. Her mother, after a brief pause, said she'd taken care of it all these years, carefully stored it in tissue paper in a sturdy box in the attic. When the box arrived in the mail 2 weeks later, Emily unwrapped layers of yellowed tissue paper and pulled out the ivory lace dress. The fabric felt fragile between her fingers, like catching a wisp of spider silk. She untied a satin ribbon looped on the hanger and held the dress to her chest, eyes closed. For a moment, she revisited every pang of humiliation she'd felt on that June evening. And then something lifted inside her: pride, compassion, a sense of reclamation. This dress had been a mark of difference when her friends mocked her. Now it would become a symbol of something infinitely more powerful: her own joy, her resilience, and the love of the man standing by her side. The day of the wedding arrived on a brilliant spring Saturday. Cherry blossoms bloomed in the botanical gardens, painting the grounds in pale pink and white. The air was perfumed with musk and honey, and a tinkling wind chime hung from the gazebo's rafters overhead. Rows of white folding chairs lined a lawn covered in petals, where family and friends gathered in bright dresses and tailored suits. A gentle string quartet played Pachelbel's Canon in D, and the late morning sun sparkled in the pond beyond. Emily stood backstage with her mother, Lola, and her younger brother, Carlos. As Lola buttoned the final rose-colored sash on the bridesmaid dress, Carlos winked at her through the mirror and said, "You look amazing, Em." His gentle voice reminded her how he had always been her staunchest ally, the only one to ever defend her when their high school classmates teased her. His presence steadied her. Her mother hooked the old lace dress onto the rod of a garment rack in the gazebo's anteroom, and Emily closed her eyes. With Lola's help, she stepped into the gown, guiding the delicate fabric over her arms and down her torso. The dress hugged her like a second skin, intricately embroidered flowers pressed against her ribcage, piped seams tracing the lines of her waist, and a panel of scalloped lace forming a modest train that brushed the soles of her shoes. She stood in the mirror, seeing a bride who radiated quiet confidence and grace. "Beautiful," her mother whispered, brushing a loose curl behind Emily's ear. "You're going to turn heads." Carlos slipped a boutonniere onto his lapel and said, "They'll see how beautiful you are, and how happy." Emily's chest tightened with gratitude. They stepped out into the warm afternoon light, and Emily's heart fluttered as she walked down the narrow aisle flanked by magnolia trees draped in blossoms. Her father, who had driven in from New York that morning, smiled at her from the front row, tears catching in his eyes. Beside him sat Nathaniel's parents in neat suits, his sister in a sky blue dress, her husband already dabbing his cheeks with a tissue. And behind them, scattered in half the rows, sat all the old friends who had once mocked her blue dress: Chloe, Marissa, Justin, and half a dozen others. Their faces were flushed with excitement, some nervously clutching programs, others leaning forward to catch every detail. When they had asked for invitations, Emily and Nathaniel had hesitated. For a moment, she had wondered if she should put them on the do not invite list. But Nathaniel's gentle reasoning won out. "Let them see the real you," he had said. "Let them see what they missed out on." As the musicians struck the final chord of the prelude, the officiant, a kindly local minister named Pastor Ellen, cocked her head, smiled at Emily, and began the ceremony. Nathaniel stood at the altar, his eyes shining with love as Emily reached his side. She had considered donning a modern gown, sleek satin, clean lines, but every fiber of her heart had whispered to her that the lace dress she once hid away was meant for this moment. When Pastor Ellen asked if anyone had objections, the crowd shifted. Silence stretched for a heartbeat, then a rustle of leaves overhead, and she continued, "Neither having any further objections, I solemnly bind you together in marriage." Nathaniel grasped Emily's hands, and the lace texture under his fingertips felt like a promise made years ago now realized. They exchanged vows. Emily spoke of finding kindness in unexpected corners, and how Nathaniel's quiet encouragement had made her shine. Nathaniel promised to keep discovering the simple, everyday joys of life with her, holding doors, learning her favorite poems by heart, and cherishing her stories. When they spoke their final words, "I do," Carlos let out a whoop that set off gentle laughter among the guests. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and they kissed as Anna, the violinist, began to play Ave Maria, soft and lilting. After the ceremony, the newlyweds walked down the aisle together. Emily's mother draped a light shawl over her shoulders to ward off the faint May breeze, and Emily inhaled the scent of blossoms, faint memories of her younger self, mingling with her present happiness. She noticed Chloe's eyes glistening with tears, Marissa with her hands clasped to her mouth, and Justin giving her a thumbs up from the back row. They approached and gathered in a small cluster. Chloe hesitated before speaking, her voice unsteady. I'm so sorry, I was an idiot back then. That dress," she pointed to Emily's gown. "It's beautiful. It reminds me of how special you always were." Marissa stepped forward, her black-rimmed glasses slipping down her nose. "I feel like such a jerk. I was so focused on fitting in, I didn't see how amazing you were." Justin nudged forward, cheeks pink. "I never should have said what I did. You were brave to wear that dress. I'm proud to know you." Emily's heart swelled. She clasped their hands in her own, feeling their sincerity. "Thank you," she said, voice low with emotion. "I wore this dress today because it reminds me that kindness matters more than fitting in." She touched the lace at her chest. "I'm grateful for who I was and who I've become. I hope that if you ever feel unsure of yourself, you remember that." Her friend smiled, eyes bright with regret and relief, and together they watched Emily join Nathaniel at the reception. The reception took place under a large white tent beside the gazebo, tables draped in linen and decorated with small vases of wildflowers. Long boards of wood held platters of grilled salmon, rosemary potatoes, roasted asparagus, and a large wedding cake adorned with fresh berries and edible flowers that echoed the blossoms around them. As the golden late afternoon light filtered through the tent's canvas, the air held a soft hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and the patter of feet on grass. Emily and Nathaniel shared their first dance to Etta James's "At Last," bodies swaying beneath a canopy of fairy lights. Emily's dress glowed in the soft light, the lace seeming to float around her. Nathaniel slid his hand to her waist, careful not to crumple the fragile fabric, and whispered, "You look incredible." "I'm glad," she said gently, "because this dress is part of me." He nodded, eyes warm and steady. It's perfect." On the sidelines, children ran around carefully wearing parts of both families' heirlooms. An embroidered shawl here, a pair of cufflinks there, reminding everyone that heritage, in all its forms, was to be celebrated rather than shunned. Grandma Judy, Nathaniel's grandmother, offered a grandmotherly wink as she helped herself to a slice of cake. Nearby, Mrs. Gladwell, once the dreaded bakery matron, stood clutching her purse and raising a glass of sparkling cider. Emily had invited her out of a desire for full reconciliation. "If you'd like to see the real meaning of that dress," she had said, "you're welcome to join us today." When Mrs. Gladwell approached Emily, she hesitated, her lips pressed together in a line. Then she held out her hand and said in a voice surprisingly gentle, "Alina, I'm sorry." Emily blinked, recognizing the name she'd misheard at first. The old woman's real name was Alina Gladwell, not Alice. It felt like one last small stitch in the fabric of reconciliation. "Thank you," Emily said, accepting her hand. "That means a lot." After dinner, the DJ queued up "We Are Family," and a mass conga line wound its way around the tent. Emily and Nathaniel led their parents and friends in a joyful dance, everyone laughing and clapping. At one point, Emily glanced down at her dress, catching sight of a small tear in the hem. She knew it had happened when she tripped over her steps while twirling with her father. For a moment, she hesitated, considering having it rushed for repairs the next day. But then she caught Nathaniel's eye, his arms steady around her, and she realized the tear was a badge of honor, a mark left by all the love and joy of this day. She cradled the fabric gently, leaning into her husband as the melody carried them. "I've never been happier," she whispered, closing her eyes. "Me neither," he said, voice soft as the evening breeze. As dusk deepened, fireflies rose around the tent, blinking like golden lanterns. Emily's cousins lit sparklers and handed them out to children, creating a galaxy of dancing lights. She stepped onto the grass, sparkler in hand, and felt Nate take the other. Together they lifted their sparklers to the sky and let the tiny embers drift down. The crowd cheered, their laughter and applause ringing through the night like the sweetest music. That evening, as Emily lay in the bed of the small guest cottage behind her aunt's house, her heart brimmed with gratitude. She thought of the journey that dress had taken, from a thrift shop discovery to a mockery, then to her wedding gown, seed of so much joy. She pictured her old classmates, now smiling and apologetic, and how the dress had revealed to them the beauty of staying true to oneself. She pictured her son, who would someday hear this story and know that being different was a gift. She thought of her mother and brother, who had loved her unconditionally. She thought of Nathaniel, whose love had been patient and encouraging. At last, she drifted to sleep, the evening's laughter and music echoing softly in her mind. The lace dress lay folded on a chair in the corner, its seams worn in places, its embroidery slightly frayed, a testament to the life it had lived. It had been a catalyst at Crestwood High, a source of pain and ridicule. Yet today, it had become the symbol of her triumph, her resilience, and the true joy she had found by embracing herself fully. And as she slept, a single firefly tapped against the window, a tiny star of promise, illuminating the gentle curve of her smile. Whiskazali,